Dear students, thank you for taking the time to view our last lecture with the goal of helping you prepare the ISP report. I've had to adjust this session quite a few times, so I hope it will respond to your needs. I was scrolling through Instagram the other day and I came across graffiti work that was done by Matzo, and actually a team of graffiti artists in Senegal, to raise awareness around the coronavirus and helping people understand the different ways to prevent and protect themselves. For those of you in the hip-hop program, I thought you might appreciate and celebrate this initiative of using hip-hop and art as a means to raise awareness around important social issues. Today's agenda will cover an overview of the ISP, the research process, choosing a topic and a problem to focus on, developing a research question, creating a research design. I'll cover a little bit on internet-based research and focus on developing your ISP proposal and the literature review section. We'll also go over important deadlines at the end. To give an overview of the ISP proposal, you are now all required to submit an ISP project or to carry out an ISP project. I do want to inform you that the research proposal is the final assignment for the RME course, and it is worth 35% of your final grade. The research proposal that you will be developing should address an issue related to the program that you are in for SIT, include your research question, a review of the literature, the methods that you'll be using, and how it complies with ethical standards learned through the course. And by this I mean anything from the vulnerable populations or avoiding vulnerable populations, as well as the informed consent process and how you are safeguarding and keeping information that you are collecting. Primary considerations for your ISP. You want to make sure you look into the feasibility of your topic, that you are choosing a topic that will be easy for you to conduct within the time and geographic constraints that we unfortunately find ourselves in at this moment. That your topic is interesting, so you choose something that you feel invested in, passionate about, or just curious to explore. That it is relevant to the SIT program that you are in, and ethically that you consider the positive and negative aspects of conducting this type of research. There is a resource that is available on the Google Classroom, which is the African journals and databases that cover a wide variety of research on Africa. Many of your home universities might have libraries that give you access to a lot of information, but not so much specifically on Africa. So I encourage you to look into this resource to see if your topic is able to bring about a lot of information. It would be unfortunate for you to have a topic in mind that you're not able to get much information on, and hopefully these resources can help you with that. The research process moving forward, because many of you will have to adapt your initial research ideas or your internship topics to a research, you'll want to make sure that you go through this 5-step process. The first step being sorry, my computer's loading. Okay. Oh, we've skipped a couple of... Okay, so your 5-step process. You want to make sure that you're choosing an interesting research topic, that you narrow it down so that it's more specific. You're formulating a question, creating a design, and writing your proposal. This is the 5-step process that we'll be following to develop your research proposal. When you are choosing a research topic and problem, you might want to consider questions or ideas that have been raised during classroom discussions, anything based on the readings you've had to do, so articles or books that stimulated your interest, or based on any of the field trips or travel experiences you've had, or problems or challenges you've witnessed in your host country, Senegal, or any type of cultural practices that inform or influence issues either positively or negatively. So if you don't already have a topic in mind or you're looking to adapt your topic, these elements might help you. For your research question, once you have a topic question idea, you'll want to ask yourselves a couple more questions to make sure that your question is researchable, as I like to use. Is your question appropriate in terms of its scope, not too broad or too narrow? You want to make sure here that you're not asking questions that are simple in terms of yes or no, but that they are open-ended and allow you to view issues from multiple lenses or perspectives. Number 2, will you be able to answer your question given the limitations such as time, geographic access, or language barriers? Now that you're at a distance, you will no longer be having access to a translator, and so this also determines the type of questions you're able to ask. Number 3, can you find information about your question in the library, on the internet, or through primary field research? This is a very important question to ask as it will determine the research design or plan that you will have for answering your question. Information that is only accessible through primary field research may be complicated at this time as you are no longer based in Senegal. I will talk a little bit about internet-based primary research, but most of you will end up having to do secondary-based research. And the 4th question, have you worded your question in a concrete way so that you have a clear understanding of what you are researching? Basically, is your research question clear and actionable? I do have some resources posted on the Google Classroom to help you develop researchable questions. Definitely check those out in order to help you with this process. As you are creating a research design, you'll want to think of the framework that will be used to answer your question. This involves making decisions about the type of data you need, the methods you'll use to collect and analyze them, and the location or timescale of your research. The internet can be a location for your research if you're doing mostly desk-based research, and the timescale that you have is basically a month to finish this process. It's important to have a strong research design as it'll make for a successful research proposal and eventual paper. Do you remember when we talked about research approach design and methods? This will help you design your research plan. So your research design, in terms of your research approach, you want to know whether you are doing exploratory research, so you're looking into an area that hasn't been explored much, so there isn't that much information available on it specifically, or whether you're doing explanatory research, where information is available and you are looking into the connections or coming to a new understanding of this information. And we've covered a lot on creative research in our last session. Your research design will determine whether your research is experimental or non-experimental. Most of you are doing non-experimental research, and for those of you who would think of doing an experimental research, this would either have a pre- and post-test or some type of control group. And for your research method, this is determined by whether you want to do qualitative research that looks in depth into particular issues, quantitative research which has more numerical analysis and looks at issues from a variety of people. So you're either collecting data through surveys or through large databases that are pre-existing, or whether you want to combine both through mixed methods. You'll also want to make sure that you look into how you're collecting your data and whether it is primary or secondary data. Now, there are many advantages and disadvantages to both primary and secondary data, but let's focus on the advantages of secondary data since most of you will be doing secondary research. The legwork has already been done for you, and this is definitely a big time saver because you don't have to collect the data yourself. So you might have a lot of data to choose from, and it's quick or easy to find on the internet. And one of the other advantages is that other people who have collected this data probably had more resources than you did. It might not always be relevant, but you should be able to find enough secondary research to support your own independent or original research. And with that, I did want to clarify that there is a misconception that only primary data-based research is good research. And this is not true because there are many studies and even meta-studies that collect secondary data and that do very valid and valuable research. Now, I did mention a little bit earlier about internet-based primary research, and this is research that you can do using the internet. So whether you are conducting an interview through WhatsApp or using Zoom to conduct a focus group or distributing a survey through social media, there are many ways that the internet can be used to collect primary data. And if you're interested in this, I do have a resource on the Google Classroom that is available and that also covers the ethical concerns related to this. So I definitely encourage you to consult it if you're curious. Now, focusing on the ISP proposal. What should be in your ISP proposal? Your ISP should consist of a title and abstract, an introduction, a literature review, which I will develop further in this video, a positionality and ethics statement, which you have already developed. So if you need more information about this, definitely look into the guidelines for the assignment. You will also need to have a section on the research design and method, as well as the limitations and implications of your research. So here we're asking, what are the limitations? But in terms of implications, how is your research impacting policy or theory? Is it helping in terms of a policy or any other positive elements related to your research? There's a section to go over this. And your references. So there are specific guidelines that I have included in the assignment section for your draft proposal, and they gives a detail even up to the number of paragraphs that are recommended. Now, this doesn't mean that you should stick to this. You can either develop more paragraphs, especially for your literature review. It might be a couple of pages. And I also have included a rubric for your ISP proposal that explains the number of points that you can get for each section and also can allow you to further understand the expectations. Now, to focus on the literature review, this is the most important section of your proposal, and it is worth the most amount of points, as you can tell. Your literature review is an overview of the research on a given topic, and it answers your research questions. Your literature review is important and should be considered or treated as such. A good or well-written literature review should organize the literature that you have collected, should evaluate this literature, identify patterns and trends in the literature, so are there commonalities, are there differences, and synthesize the literature. And by that, I mean your voice should be heard throughout your literature review. Now, when you are reviewing a literature, you definitely want to make sure that you're reading with a purpose. So make sure that you are choosing your sources wisely. I want to make sure that your literature reviews have journal or scientific-based papers. 4 to 5 would be a minimum. Some literature reviews can include a little bit more, although I do not encourage you to use less than 4 to 5 academic sources. You may use other sources that are not academic, but you want to make sure that your research is academic in nature. The purpose of your literature review is to place each work in the context of its contribution to understanding the research problem that is being studied. You want to make sure that you describe the relationships of each work. So this is where you are comparing and contrasting or identifying new ways to interpret prior research. Reveal any gaps that exist in the literature. So what is left to be known, or what do we need to know more about? That it resolves conflicts among seemingly contradictory previous studies. So what are the debates that are engaged here? Identify areas of prior scholarship to present duplication of effort. So making sure you're not doing something that's already been done. Point the way in fulfilling a need for additional research, and most importantly, locate your own research within the context of the existing literature. The process of writing a literature review will consist of identifying your question, reviewing the discipline styles. So most of you are doing social science-based research, and many of you are housed within disciplines related to your majors. So if there's this particular discipline style you want to follow, you definitely should do so. You'll then be required to search for the literature, manage the references that you have had, critically analyze and evaluate these, synthesize them, and write your review. So it's a 7-step process that I'm sure many of you will be doing quite successfully. I have included some samples of literature reviews that students produced last year. These are samples that can help to give you an idea of some of the expectations within a literature review. They're not perfect, but at least they provide examples of work that have been done before. And in terms of important deadlines, just a reminder, I have adjusted the date for the ISP draft because I'm submitting to you this recording a bit later. So please make sure you have a draft proposal submitted by Saturday, March 28th by 11:59 p.m. This is Dakar time. It'll allow me to give you some feedback, and your final proposal will be due on Friday, April 3rd by 11:59 p.m. So you will overall have roughly about 10 days or more, like 2 weeks, to work on your ISP proposal. I do remain available by email if you have any questions, and I thank you for your attention.